Phil, how will you describe the work that you do?
So I'm trying to change the culture of entrepreneurship, which now creates a failure epidemic that leads to a disproportionate representation of mental health issues amongst founders. And I believe the root cause is because we are very good at getting more tactics, and then some of us are good at getting more good strategies, but then we ultimately self-sabotage with the inner mismanagement that leads to bad decision making. So at Courage Compass Company, we try to help entrepreneurs with emotional mastery, especially the three emotions that form the shadow of entrepreneurship, which are the root cause of most of the bad decisions that we make as founders, and then make better decisions and ultimately reconnect with their intuition.
Interesting. So I love what you said there, and I think that we don't, at least we don't see content or we don't see a lot of people talking about these things. Yeah, sure, we will probably make bad decisions. Is part of the, we are flawed. We're humans. We cannot predict the future. We just make decisions based on our current knowledge. But you're pointing out to something very interesting when it comes to the intuition. It seems to me, at least from my own experience, that when it comes to intuition, we tend to have like two contradicting voices. We have that very low whisper that says, "Hey, you might want to take this path," but then on the other hand, call it ego, call it your protector, call it however you want to call it. It's like a louder voice. It's like, no, we don't want to do this. We just want to do the other thing, whether it's for own validation or because we are scared of trying something new, which we're scared of trying to tap into intuition. And I think that a lot of that comes from limiting belief that we are operating from. People that you coach, founders that you have helped, entrepreneurs in general, and this is probably diving a little bit more into identity. What patterns of identity do you see most often keep even high achievers small or even stuck?
So the core issue that I had to pay in sweat and blood to learn was that there's a point where growth is your enemy. And so that goes into identity because let's say you start a business, you start from a place of hope. You want to achieve something meaningful, you want to improve your life, you have all your identity about who you're going to become during the successful journey that you're imagining, right? So, but what happens is you enter the shadow. So uncertainty arrives, then fear of failure, and it can trigger a sense of unworthiness, which are the three levels of the shadow of entrepreneurship. And if you're stuck there, then you make more and more reactive decisions that are ultimately making it very hard to have a proper sense of vision that extends beyond the short term. And with time, it leads to identity fusion with your business outcome. And at that stage where you're entering the failure zone, if you are attached to growth and you don't let go of growth as a means to consider yourself worthy and consider that you're actually growing as a person, it will add additional pressure on in the shadow of entrepreneurship, which will lead to a faster failure and likely a destructive failure rather than just a failure as a gateway towards transformation. So what I'm trying to help founders realize is that entrepreneurship is less of a journey of growth, more of a journey of transformation. And it's the case for the startup that needs to transform at each growth stage between ideation to seed to growth stage, and exit eventually. And it's the same thing for founders that have to become a courageous hero that goes into their own journey and entering the forest at the darkest path kind of thing. But then at some point you need to find product market fit. Then you need to move from a hustler to a leader and build a team that is aligned. So it's transformation after transformation, and it doesn't end at the exit. It ends when you look at your journey, pick up your broken icons of wisdom that you had when you stepped in that forest of the unknown, and then integrate that as wisdom and become something else that either can build a sustainable business if you have failed, or can transform into not needing to do another business if you've sold one, and maybe step into a mentorship role, maybe step into an investor role, maybe do something completely different. Because ultimately, the entrepreneur experience is a tool that we can use for self-discovery and transformation that is unique. I don't think you can understand entrepreneurship truly just as much if you haven't done it, just as you cannot understand being a parent truly if you're not a parent, or going to war. I would expect, and there are rites of passing that we have access to, and entrepreneurship is one of them. But letting go of growth at some point and stepping into transformation is a crucial step that most people miss.
Hmm. That is absolutely fascinating. I was talking to a guest a few weeks ago. She Her work is around identity. She has a PhD in psychology. Fascinating
Yeah, so
person.
I've listened to it a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
I catch a few minutes. I haven't, unfortunately.
she's great. But one thing that we were discussing there is kind of partially what you're saying right now. It's almost the we even when we start entrepreneurship or even when we start any kind of journey, it's almost like we have an outdated belief, an outdated story, and outdated identities. It's almost that cliche phrase, what got you here won't get you there. And
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
many times when we start an entrepreneurship or we are climbing our corporate ladder, we have, especially if you're an overachiever, that comes from identity that at some point in our childhood, your brain created a story believing
Hmm.
that you needed to get good grades or be perfect or being the best of the best in order for you to gain love. So
Yeah.
if you start an entrepreneur, if you jump into entrepreneurship thinking that you have to overachieve, that you have to be the best of the best, now your focus is completely on growth, and that can consume you because you cannot control that. You can influence the outcome to some extent if you put the hard work, if you're smart and if you make the right choices, perhaps. But at the end of the day, it's out of your hand. So I love how you worded in a way that, hey, it's all about transformation. If you focus
Hmm.
too much on the achievement, if you anchor your identity in how much you achieve as an entrepreneur, you're probably going to fail many times. And even if you succeed, then you're going to be probably miserable. That's why you see a lot of entrepreneurs that
Hmm.
even they have everything, they're secretly exhausted. They're still chasing something that they feel that our next goal, our next milestone, then I'll be able to rest. I'll be able to just feel that I made it.
Yeah.
But as Alex Hormozy have said, the podcast in the past, it's like you have already achieved the goals that you said that were going to make you happy, and yet you're not. How do you help leaders, like uncover these blind spots, or how, I guess, how you help them see that what they're chasing, even if it's unconscious, is holding them back, or is making them miserable, or is making them fail time and time again?
Well, the crossroad of failure is present in the light and in the shadows. So if you're failing because the business is failing, you risk becoming a fallen hero, spiteful, resentful, angry at reality, thinking that blaming everything else, a victim. But often it also happens in the light. So when I scaled, so my business journey in a nutshell, I was working in big companies, and then I started a business on the side. And when COVID hit, we were about to fail because we had lost our suppliers, but we pivoted, and then it scaled to 70 million in 8 months, and we expanded internationally. And I eventually exited that business. At that point, I was 31 years old. And I had hit pretty much all my external targets, but my conception, having been a high school teacher by trade and then never really teaching, was to go back to teach. And the more I liked entrepreneurship, the more I wanted to teach entrepreneurship. So I figured I'm not ready yet to go to do that. I need to prove myself more that I can still grow as an entrepreneur and really master the journey. And so I failed to transform in the light. I took increasingly more risk because my standard was I need to do, and I had to verbally say that, in a personal growth program to realize it was stupid, but I needed to benchmark myself by doing impressively incredible things. Uh, so it was always, the bar was so high. After you've made 36 million in profit, and it's, what's the next bar? Is it 100 million? And what sense does it really have at this point, right? So I think that's the issue, that people anchor themselves into that same growth, and they fail to transform when they sell their businesses. They have built this meaning and worthiness formula within themselves that is not sustainable. And even for people that have not sold a business, if you think about your life, growth as a way to feel positive emotion and worth is not sustainable if it's not carefully managed. Because if you're 20 years old, the growth potential is way higher than if you're 80 years old. So what? And when I'm 80, I need to build $1 billion company every weekend to feel worthy. It's not sustainable. So at some point, you need to change your KPIs. And some people do it naturally. Some people don't do it at all, and they are hurting. And I'm trying to bring into the consciousness of entrepreneurs that, okay, well, you've reached that point. The hunger and identity anchor that you had served you well, but now you have to change the rules a little bit.
You know, that is, nobody talks much about what you just said. See, you had a successful business. You were able to pivot, you know, grow your business to 8 figures, and even have like a great exit. And you were successful by society measures.
Yeah,
A lot of money, you're great. And yet you felt that you didn't have enough credibility or authority to teach others.
yeah,
And it's interesting because many of us feel that way, that unless we achieve certain level of valid, I think it would be validation to, we're seeking out there proof that we deserve to do certain things, or we are allowed to do certain things. So unless you have enough people telling you, yes, Phil, you should go for it, you should go, still. And I think that's an illusion to some extent, that, oh, I need what those people have to tell me, then I can prove to myself that yes, I deserve, or I'm allowed to teach others how to be better entrepreneurs, even though
hmm
you were already a successful entrepreneur. Maybe, and just maybe, and this is just an assumption, maybe you probably felt that your success was probably a fluke. It's almost like, well, it's almost like, yeah, I had, I was lucky to some extent. I still work hard, still make some decisions, but COVID, in hindsight, helped me grow to 8 figures. But can I repeat that? Because if it happens once, okay, it might have been luck. But if I can repeat it
yeah.
two, three,
That
four
was my
times,
narrative. That was my
yes.
narrative. And then, I had to really step back and really think about it. And for me, I think most of my failures spiraled from a sense of unworthiness, because the first thing that happened when I built the big company is all my so we had a structure flaw in our partnerships. We had 5 people, bootstrap, nobody put any money, um, and only two of us were working. And the one in the group that was the most passive, when you say, I'm not sure how you said it, but you said, when we kind of have our hunger, and then when we hit a point when it's hard to decouple ourselves. Well, anyway, he became very, very greedy, and then he wanted to break all the rules that we had internally, and that created a huge conflict. And I was the one that was his target, because I was the only one that knew what was going on. I was sourcing, I was negotiating, I was selling, I was leading everything, and I was trying to bring people on board. But I was also in my own shadow, very reactive, not aware of my level of energy, emotional state. So I wasn't at my best. I have my part of responsibility there. But that conflict, because he used a moral frame to attack and get what he wanted, really affected my sense of worth. And I had not realized to which extent that had been the case until I eventually were able to heal from that. Um, but yeah, so I had another point I wanted to bring with that, but it's really these emotions that become a yeah an issue. Oh yeah, and yeah, so because I had this sense of unworthiness, I felt like I needed to prove without a doubt that I deserved the success I had. So I was looking at more accomplishment, more and more and more. But it took me a while to realize that actually the real value that I could actually give, and the real value of transformation is the broken icons that I had to pay in sweat and blood to learn. And if you look at everybody's life, maybe you're not going to accomplish something very crazy good, but maybe you don't need that. What you need is you need to have courage and test your limited belief, rub them against reality, see what survives, see what doesn't survive, ask yourself what luck had to play in that, and kind of grow in the sense of transforming from that. And then at this point, this gives you value because you can share that to someone else that has that broken icons, that icon that is not yet broken, and you can help them break them so that they also can transform. And that's the ultimate rule of the hero journey. It's not slaying the dragon, collecting the treasure. It's going back with the elixir of wisdom. If you look at how Joseph Campbell framed it, right? And I think at the micro level, that's also true in any profession, especially in entrepreneurship. And the vehicle for that is courage, not necessarily hope, target, IQ, or whatever else.
Hmm. I love that you share that story. The sense of unworthiness, I think, is almost part of human nature. I've been trying to figure out exactly where it comes from, why we have it. Whether it's, I don't know if I deserve, or I'm worthy of love, worthy of success, or worthy of validation, or worthy of connection. And it's something that I think a lot of people are miserable in that regard. People are
Mm,
trying to chase, constantly chasing something, trying to feel worthy. And I wonder, since you're one of those people that actually heal that, and it's
yeah.
one of the hardest things to heal, because we can consciously and rationally think, you know what, I'm deserving, I'm worthy, because it makes sense. If you read the theory, of course my essence is enough, but it all comes down to the belief and to the internal self, how we feel about it. How are you able to heal that part and start feeling worthy,
Yeah.
especially when it seemed to be a very rooted scar?
Yes. So it's I'm gonna try to answer that as best as I can. So I hit a rock bottom late 2023, in November, when I had a warehouse fire just after I had restructured a company where the technical founders had burnt out and quit. So I was stretched so thin, and I was still struggling with my unworthiness, which was an even bigger burden as I was having these misfortunes and also these the failures, right? That were just fueling that little fire of unworthiness. Then I was able to break that pattern, and we can get into that and it's two concepts that I now have integrated within me, which is letting the world burn and anchoring outside. But to answer your question, by the end of 2024, I had all the answers within me, but I could not structure them in a way that it would allow me to transform. It's as if I was drowning in my broken icons everywhere. I could see the learnings, but I could not really see the pattern and realize and understand that. So I hired PJ, who's now my chief transformation officer. She just left the government to work with me in my Courage Compass company, and I hired her to do our personal growth program as well as our TEDx coaching program. So I took 12 weeks to ask myself very strategic question and have a conversation with her and go deep, because I also wanted to build a TED talk that was very authentic to myself. And so this journey of 3 months of gathering the broken icons, asking myself the right question, having her as the most intuitive person I've ever met, reflect back what I was saying and kind of piece the puzzle with me, really, really helped. So it wasn't therapy. And I've tried, before, but this is really what made the huge difference to me. It really made it. Just hearing myself say I need to do surprisingly impressive things to feel worthy, and then being asked, well, what do you have to do during your day to actually be worthy? Did you not wake up worthy? And realizing that we all wake up worthy. If our sense of worth was tied to our action and our accomplishment, it means that what we're not going to be worthy half of the year. It doesn't make sense. So we're all, we have an intrinsic worth. And then I think in entrepreneurship, we call that mostly the imposter syndrome, but it's really a problem of self worth at the end of the day. And so that perspective is what really allowed me. And I've never felt unworthy since it's been like 8 months or so. She really fixed it for me. And
How long did
you
it
know,
take? How long did it take, by the way, the process of healing that part?
it took me about a year, to be honest, because
Mhm.
so November 2023, I was very depressed, um, and I had enough. I was forced to reconnect with my intuition in a way that yeah, I guess that was the beginning. So in a nutshell, I think it's worth explaining a bit more. But so I had done my exit after. So I had done a partial exit, and then I thought I would was fixing. It was originally a compromise on my end to fix the toxic relationship with my first business, the toxic partner. And then at the end of the year, I could see that he was just pretending and it was not really fixed. So I made a full exit, and then I became a serial entrepreneur, and then that just created more pressure. But I was mostly going all in on a technology company that I've put a lot of my liquidity into and all of my time. And when I lost these two technical founders, just as we had pivoted the business and found product market fit with letters of intents for hundreds of millions, I, when I thought I had a break, I lost the two guys. So I tried to restructure to be able to kind of do that, and it took a lot of effort. And at that point, the rest of my first exit was tied to inventory, and I received a call, and we had a partnership with someone that was supposed to liquidate that within. But I just learned that not only had not happened, but our warehouse had burned, and there was no insurance on the stock. So a huge financial blow on top of just staying in that sense of unworthiness, being in the fear zone, and so at that point I just didn't care about any fires around me. I just didn't want to manage anything. I was anchoring myself in my identity of chasing to be a father of the year. Um, but then that failure, I had a identity fusion with my failure, where I could see the ripple effect of how it made me a worse dad in my eyes, because I couldn't now maybe afford to send my kids to Harvard anymore. I had to kind of so it was rippling across my other sub identities. And so when that rock bottom moment happened, I felt a strong calling within me to drop everything, and really not, and when I say drop, I mean no plan to give my other partner anything to cover what I was supposed to do. I just booked a trip to Cancun, took my three kids who were 3 years old, 5 and 7 at the time, go there depressed, for a week, and not aim to be anything else than just a father in the present moment. And that was my anchor. I anchored my identity in just being a dad, not the best dad, not whatever else, just a dad. And so that happened late November 2023. And from that place of identity safety, I was able to slowly uh, journey through what had happened, uh, and gave myself the right to be aimlessly courageous, not to set up another goal for myself, just listen to what life brings to me. I've been a go-to-market advisor for a trade venture studio in AI, trainer for AI for real AI dynamics, and eventually I was asked to create a private equity fund for wide range capital. And so just following where I felt I needed to learn something, just my intuition, without the pressure of having a target. And eventually I saw what I wanted to do, and I went all into that. And so that journey ended with my TED talk kind of thing.
Interesting. You know, I love the story and the ups and downs, and clearly, people can people might feel from the outside say, well, I don't know what he complains about. He made a huge exit. He was a successful entrepreneur, beautiful family, but nobody talks about the internal, the mental, the emotional, and the
Mm,
psychological storm that we might be experiencing at that point. It's almost like if you're wealthy, if you're successful, you don't have an excuse. Well, I mean, we're all humans. We all struggle with the same issues. And I appreciate your vulnerability when it comes to this, and how not only courageous but wise you were to say, hey, something is not working out. I need to just step aside and work on myself and trying to understand why I feel unworthy, why I feel that I need to keep pushing. Why? Because many people tend to ignore that. A lot of entrepreneurs that attach their worth to what they accomplish or what they have or what they achieve, it's like, no, I'm not. Just listen to your body, listen to what your intuition is trying to tell you. And I wonder, especially when it comes to you, how do you feel once you start trusting that intuition? Because I wouldn't say it a similar path, but because I haven't reached the level of success. But in 2023, my marriage fell apart when I was already depressed, and I started asking myself what I really, really wanted. I think it was the first time I asked myself what I wanted.
Mm.
And I think that at that point, the podcast came to the front of my mind. It's like, you need to follow this path. It's like, well, I'm not entirely sure because I'm not somebody who talks to people. I'm kind of introverted, shy, whatever. And the moment I started taking steps following that intuition, life started changing, radically. And
Yeah.
it's almost like you start trusting yourself more. And you, instead of trying to force your way through life, like white knuckle and say, okay, I don't care. Just let almost like life guide you. And you don't know which
Yes.
path is going to take you. And even when you say, well, maybe I'll do AI, maybe I'll follow this. And eventually will take you to a point that you didn't even see 6 months ago. But now, because you followed those, breadcrumbs, now you are where you are. I wonder how impactful that path or that journey was for you, and how you have been able, through your own wisdom, through your own insight, through your own lessons learned, help leaders or entrepreneurs or anybody to just not not get too much in their head and trying to focus more on the work that you did for yourself.
Yes, and I love your journey, and I think it's a good example. It's a really good example of following your intuition, and it's to me, it's been always true that when you act courageously, and and with integrity, the universe conspire to help you. And right now, just my company, the level of talent I have, just the people around me that are just jumping to help me, uh, is mind blowing. I feel very, very privileged. And how I help founders reconnect with their intuition. Well, the way I'm structuring everything is through first a diagnostic. So it's the entrepreneur readiness score, but it's really the entrepreneur internal readiness score, because my strong hypothesis based on my lived experience and the research we've done is that the quality of your decision determines business outcome. Emotional reactivity undermines decision quality, and your unconscious patterns manipulate your decision, which leads to failure. And the current culture, by overly and the emphasis, my
Hmm.
French is coming out now, but they put the emphasis too much on the skills tactics. And if you look at Alex Hormozy, like you said, well, do this and it's so simple, you're just going to make money. But that's step one of failure. Because the step two is uncertainty, and then step three is shit, not only am I not sure where I'm actually going with that, I'm not even sure I want to do that, and now I've put my money, I can fail, people are going to laugh at me. And then unworthiness, who am I to actually think had what it takes to be an entrepreneur, right? So you step in the shadow, and this is where you sabotage yourself. So the first thing you need to do is, when you are uncertain, I call that the courage compass exercise. So we all have a natural cognitive preference. You can do the emergenetics test, which is the one we currently use. So it's going to give you how you naturally think, and that will sabotage yourself if you're not aware of that. And when we think about diversity, that's how I build my team. I look at cognitive diversity. So I'm 95th percentile conceptual thinker, so I'm very creative. I'm also 95th on relational, and I have a strength in logic, but I'm super weak on structural. So my blind spot is structural. When I was a sales rep, I hated to do my CRM, and I put myself up to failure by overly. I'm naturally good at risk taking, so I would take a lot of risk conceptually to do things differently, and maybe not do my structure that was proven to succeed. And it worked at the end because I was lucky, I guess, but I could have failed because of that and not being aware of that blind spot in myself. So once you understand that cognitive preference has nothing to do with IQ, worth, or skills, then you can start seeing that a different leader that would be as good as you would have a much different decision in at any moment, right? And so if you have a decision to make, you could say, well, my pattern of decision, if you have the self-awareness to kind of see it, is that I tend to go conceptual and imagine a billion pathways, and then I go relational and I try to abdicate my responsibility to actually drive result by building a new partnership, asking another guy or an advisor or whatever else. And so ultimately I receive bad feedback and I go back to conceptual. That was my pattern. And when I was lucky, my logic cut through that. But if if you okay, so first step is recognizing that you have patterns. Second step is mapping out how that decision could play out if you had a different cognitive style, and then let the world burn. Create some stillness in your life so that you can stop convincing yourself to go back to your pattern, and you can start feeling where you should go, because we kind of feel where we have to go. We feel we don't need to eat that ice cream, but we still convince ourselves to do so, right? So it's the mind body disconnection that we have to create another bridge. And as we do that a couple of times, then we build that muscle, that highway between gut and logic, and we become more and more integrated as a leader to make intuitive decisions, which are not reactive, which are thought out, but not in a traditional way, in the way that our body thinks about it, but doesn't have the words to say it. But if you listen to it, then you can act with intuition. And one last thing, because I know I'm talking way too much, but
You're good.
uh,
You're good. I can process a lot of information. So
okay, well, you're better than me. Uh, I would say that a big problem when you go back to growth is growth shouts, but transformation whisper. And I like that you use the whispering metaphor, because that's also how I see it. I see it here, the whispers of transformation. It doesn't require vision. It doesn't require anything else than the act of stillness, identity anchoring, and just kind of going through moving with your eyes closed, following the whispers until you see the light, kind of thing.
yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head at the beginning when the assessment that we need to take is we all good at something, right? We are naturally wired with, as you said, you're logical, and then and then you have all the skills. Maybe structural, it might not be your strong suit. And I feel, and I don't can't speak for everyone, but it seems to me that a lot of people in society feel that instead of leaning into what they're good at, what comes natural, what it feels like play to them, but it's hard for other people, we have this story, this narrative that achieving success needs to feel hard. We need to suffer to some extent. So in your case would probably be, well, I'm gonna do things that need a structure because that's what I'm lacking, and I need to put the effort. Well, what if you should lean more into who you are, what you're good at, and then outsource with a good team those
Yeah,
things that you're not
absolutely.
very good at? And it doesn't take anything away from you because we feel, well, you know sure, it's almost the worthiness to some extent. Like, if I don't work hard, if I don't kill myself, if I don't suffer, then my win or my achievement is not as valuable as others. Brother, I mean, we need to work smart, not hard. And if you can figure out what you're good at, just lean more into that. Don't just block the outside noise and focus on what you have in front of you, and make your you don't have to put more obstacles. And I think that you were able to figure out how we have these self-imposed prisons in terms of the stories that we need to develop. And maybe sometimes we're lucky in your case that, well, I didn't apply the structures when I was a salesperson, but yet I still was able to succeed. Sure, every now and then we will be lucky in that regard without needing to lean into things that are our weaker side to some extent.
Hmm.
But going back to even align mind and body is just having the courage of, and all goes back to courage, of doing the thing that we all know what we're supposed to do. We all know the path that we're supposed to follow. And the problem comes when we have that emotional response, that avoidance to a negative emotion, whether it's boredom, anxiety, fear, overwhelm. And when we feel that, you know what, I know that I should do this task, I know this is the path, for this is what is going to move the needle, but I'm going to do that other thing because I cannot, it's just too emotionally draining for me. And being able to, once again, just being with yourself and make that step, maybe breaking up into smaller steps to being able to slowly achieve those. And I agree with you, a lot of self-help or self-development and content creators say, well, just do this, just go and approach people, just knock doors. Like, brother, you have a different skills than other ones, and if I follow your advice and you and I are different, I'm going to think that I'm a failure because that is not my strength, it's yours. So you mentioned shadows, and I know that I went through, a lot of different places just now, but since you like to work in this topic a lot, what do you think are the most dangerous shadows that leaders avoid facing? And how do those shadows warp their decision making or even identity over time?
Well, so the devil is in the details, right? So I think we have been trained a lot on what you just mentioned, where you should act from a place of strength and not already care about weakness because you can always or surround yourself with people that have your weakness as a strength, and that is the right approach to be on your X in terms of what is your role, but it doesn't prevent decision failure
Hmm.
because decision failure comes from unconscious pattern and emotional not mastering the emotional, being reactive emotionally. And this is a deeper level, I would say, that Gallup Strength Finder won't capture or emergenetics won't capture, and that is ultimately what really will kill the business. So I think most leader will say, okay, well, I'm very analytical, I'm going to be an accountant, or I'm going to be ultimately a CFO, and okay, you have the right role for yourself, but because you've built your whole universe around your role and your strength, you've also built your whole universe to strengthen your decision making biases.
Hmm.
And it's so common that I speak with an entrepreneur, I mean, especially in the corporate world, but entrepreneurs who are super analytical are so afraid to actually go get data out of conversations and step into the red quadrant. People that are super structural cannot dare to think outside the box. We all have we have, maybe that's not their strength, but if they want to make a good decision, they need to build this strategic empathy within their brain to create that gap between their stimulus, which would trigger their normal decision making pattern, and the actual response that they have to step into, regardless of their role, right?
Hmm. What do you think? What do you think that most entrepreneurs fail?
I think most entrepreneur probably fail with. I was about to say that a lot of entrepreneurs fail on the structure side, but then again, I think if we were to map out every entrepreneur's, it's really, it's. I think I would say entrepreneurs fail because they don't recognize the shadow of entrepreneurship. So the way it affects their decision bias, which leads to bad decisions. And I also think they fail by not acknowledging that failure is okay and is a gateway to positive transformation if you allow it to be guided by your intuition. You know, and they become puppets dancing at the strings of the latest tactician. And so that is the pathway towards destructive failure.
And do you think that this happens? And I think that and we were just talking a little bit off camera, that many entrepreneurs, many people, many businesses fail on a daily basis because their founders are doing it for the wrong reasons. By the wrong
Yes.
reasons, I mean they're chasing the shining object. They're seeing how other people are having
Mhm.
success in that field instead of following their intuition. And if you do that, how you're supposed to have if you do something that is not within alignment within you, how do you expect to have the emotional stamina to go through the ups and downs that
Yeah,
every entrepreneur journey has?
absolutely. So I think we should approach entrepreneurship in reverse, and you've done it the right way, from what I can tell by what you said. Is people start with the shiny object, which is Gary V telling them to build a social media, whatever, and then or AI, do an AI agent, fake bot, and big whatever. So and then because they're confused between the difference between a side hustle, business, and entrepreneurship. So wisdom is perspective, and that perspective is not as clearly defined as it should. So entrepreneurship is a hero journey. You live on the lining of a coin in between two realities that you're trying to bridge, and you're always outside your comfort zone. So you're never going to be, by the way, exonerated from the shadow. You're always going to feel uncertainty, fear. Unworthiness so far hasn't come back. Maybe I really can fix that, but it likely might come back at some point, right? Uh, so the thing is, you need to learn to navigate that. But if you're aiming at, hey, just want to have a side hustle, make a few bucks, then don't think about yourself as an entrepreneur. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You can just have your main job and spend a couple hours here and there, try to do a little bit of side income. Because your main job fulfills you enough. I don't know, but you have to ask yourself the question. I started with who. So who do I see myself becoming? And right now I'm preparing my 40s. I'm 36, I'm turning 37 by the end of the year. Everything I do is towards the transformation that I want to reach when I'm going to be in my 40s. And you don't transform just by thinking. It's a mix of um,
Action.
well, it's action, but it's intuitive, action guided by intuition that sometimes you don't even know. Like if I look at my past, I every time I try to convince myself to do something that I didn't feel like I should be doing, I ultimately a couple of years later went back and have done what I felt like I should do. Because then you follow who you admire, you follow what you admire. I became a sought after business growth strategist because my first employer blew my mind with his strategic thinking skills. It was crazy to me. He was just thinking out loud about his decision making process, and I was like, wow, that's crazy good. And I always wanted to reach that, right? So it's a mix of all of that. But I'm kind of weaving away from your question. I'm going to go back. So it's about so business people optimize the system, hustler try to find some passive income, quick bucks, but entrepreneur or should target growth and transformation and use this real hero journey uh, with the right words and the right framework.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I answered your question.
Yeah, I know. I mean, to some extent, yes. Because here's the thing: is we're doing things for the wrong reasons, as you said, and if we follow people that we admire, call it Gary Vee of the world or Alex Hormozy of the world, and we see their life they have, but what they did, it seems to me, outside looking in, was from their own alignment, which is not the same as
Exactly.
every single one of us. Because I
Yes.
don't think they would have been as successful. And it seems, once again, outside looking in, seems that they're very pleased and happy and at peace with what they have accomplished, which is different from other entrepreneurs that are constantly looking and seeking validation from others, and it seems like, okay, I need to feel that voice, there's something missing in here. I'm thinking that maybe I need to achieve more, or maybe I need to show more, when in reality you're doing something that is out of alignment. But I wonder,
Yeah.
how do
Mhm.
you deal, because that's something that we all have to face, whether we're entrepreneurs or not, deal with uncertainty. I think it's one of the harder things, because we have our negativity bias that everything is a worst case scenario in our head and in our body. And yeah, we can tell ourselves that the uncertainty is a world of possibilities. Just as things can go terribly wrong, they can be, they can go exceptionally right. But how do you even deal? at an
Yeah.
emotional, a psychological, and mental level with uncertainty?
Well, the best tool is the courage compass. So going through, because uncertainty, the problem is decision quality. Uncertainty should not derail everything you're doing, right? So there are, if you feel uncertain, it's because you're about to make a decision. You wonder, or should I change what I'm doing? Should I do something else? And then if you step into the courage compass and you map out, okay, well, if I'm to make a decision right now, what could it be, depending on a different thinking style, to create a gap between your feeling of uncertainty, which could trigger a feeling of fear, and what you actually feel like you should be doing. And often that gap solves it. Like sometimes when I started the Courage Compass company, I knew I was going all in and putting all my money on the line and everything else. And I could feel
Scary.
uncertain, and I was scared, and I was starting to see myself going back to my yellow pattern of overthinking and then asking, and I was like, is the world really on fire right now, or am I just stuck in my emotions? And I just gave myself a day, map out the potential quadrant I should be stepping into, and I realized, no, I'm a good strategist. My plan is solid. I Let's give it a real shot and go into my structural quadrant and actually get into action and get it done. Not seek more ideas, not seek more help, not seek anything else than action. And that was my right decision for me. And then, oh, now I'm no longer stuck in uncertainty. I can move along and forward.
Yeah, that part when you go all in on something that you believe that might be aligned with what you do, there's an incredible amount of fear, and the worst case scenario already playing in your head, almost like, wait, what if this doesn't work out and I'm homeless? Even though you know that it's never gonna happen, but that's the automatic response. And I sort of, to some extent, it happened once again with me with the podcast, that I said, I'm just gonna go all in. I know if I have a full-time job, I'm gonna drop the podcast at some point. And the podcast being my first step. And I don't think that it will be my final goal. It's not that, oh, I'll have the biggest podcast, even though initially that was my goal, or one of the biggest podcasts. Now it feels like, oh, this is just one step. I don't know what's gonna lead me to, but I'm just open to the possibility. But every time I feel, every now and then I feel that fear is just like, am I doing the right thing? Am I? What if after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I basically spend all my savings and I have nothing to show for. And
Yeah.
it's a trust that the alignment and what you're doing, it feels right. And hey, as you said, the universe will provide and will conspire if you're doing things on alignment, and having that emotional, once again, stamina and being grounded to believe I don't have all the answers. I only need to see my next aligned step. That's all.
Yes, but I would say so. The emotional mastery and decision mastery and intuition, yes, but it also overlaps with strategy. And then after that, you go to tactics. So that's the proper way to do it. So you started with, okay, I know there's something for me in podcasting. I don't know what exactly, but I'm taking the first aimless, courageous action. Perfect. That's the exact way to start. Then as you go in the journey, so there's three stages of mastery for emotional mastery. It's see it, so you see you're stepping into uncertainty, fear, or unworthiness. Learn to navigate it so that it doesn't derail your decision. But the last step is to learn from it, because it's not the case that emotions are bad. Emotions are signals that you cannot put into words often. And so if you're feeling fearful right now, well, then you should ask yourself, why? And because that's also data. That's a data that you can use for decisions. And the best leaders, the transform leaders, can use these emotion not as enemy, but as a superpower for better decisions. And it's the same thing for intuition. You start with, I'm getting my wisdom outside of myself, but ultimately the transform leader creates his own wisdom and through within himself, and he becomes empowered by his intuition. So there's a process that I believe we have to go through. And so in your case, if you're feeling afraid and you know how to navigate it so that it doesn't derail yourself, you can ask yourself, all right, is there a whisper of transformation that I'm hearing within me that I should poke around a little bit? Because maybe there's a strategy that I haven't thought about. Maybe there's at this point a tactic that I could try to implement that could give me more clarity so that I actually act on that feeling if I, as a signal, not as a source of truth, but as a signal. And so if I go back to the way you're building things, you started with the right way, and then you step into maybe the strategic layer. How do I monetize that? How do I take it to the next step? How do I use the trust that I'm building with people in a way that serves my entrepreneurial journey? And then after that, you can actually listen to Gary Vee. And you can actually listen, because these guys, they play at the surface level. They play at the optimization tactician, but it's going to destroy you if you just start there. You have to let the universe react with the combination of your hypothesis and yourself, and that's going to create a different outcome for everybody else. So
Yeah, I think that you need a solid foundation first, and that can come from, as you said, decoding those feelings and emotions as a, hey, what is my body trying to tell me? What is the emotion thing? What is the a story behind it? What is the a limiting belief? And once you understand that, once you bring it into light, then you can sort of challenge them and sort of dissolve them and just implement the new ones, which I love and feel I could just talk for another hour or two. I really have so many different other questions. It's just fascinating, the world not only of entrepreneurship, but doing it the right way, that we don't have to suffer, that we're going to face pain because pain is inevitable, but suffering is all a matter of perspective. But as a closing question, and I think that this is for a lot of people that have tried either entrepreneurs in the past, entrepreneurship in the past, or even nowadays. But if somebody listening now feels like they have failed so hard in any area of their life that it rewires how they see themselves, their own identity, what do you think is the first crack of light that they should look for?
so if you look at positive psychology, like Martin Seligman is going to tell you that a good life is through the acronym of PERMA: positive emotion, you have relationship, meaning, and accomplishment. So you can like that or not, but at the end of the day, you need to understand that there are different buckets of importance in your life that you cannot treat as a calendar. It's not time allocation. And let's say, uh, I used to be trained by Brian Johnson from Heroic.us, which was very helpful. And he's framing it into energy, love, and work. And so it's simple, right? So if you think about work, you have these other buckets. I encourage you to find your anchor in every bucket that are important for you, so that when you feel a failure in one of them, it doesn't derail you as much as it could, and ripples into everything that you are. And for me, I had such a growth driven 31st years of my life that my relationship with my anchors in the different bucket were always growth driven. So they were always anchored in the future. So it wasn't serving me when I was failing. But if we anchor in a role that we can find in the present moment, then it becomes a safety net for our identity when we're failing. So my kids is a anchor. Where do I find my bliss? I like to joke around. I can always make someone laugh and see that, okay, well, this is something positive I've done today, which reinforced the sense that I woke up worthy, and I can still, be worth my admiration and respect regardless of what happens through my business decisions.
I love that. I love that because the fact that we're struggling in one area of our life doesn't mean that we're struggling in every area of our lives. And maybe if we feel like a complete failure in several areas of our life, well, let me try to find that one positive thing. I like to do every night before going to sleep. Just write, what went well today.
Yeah,
Anything, any small
that's
win
great.
that I can.
Gratitude is powerful.
in
Hmm.
anything, it just doesn't matter how small it is. And even if something could have seen something negative, well, can I just flip it and make and shed a light from a positive standpoint, and almost like you're rewind and prime your brain to just seek for positive things in your life, so that even if I'm like like for instance, the podcast might not be growing as much as I can, but a positive thing, I had an amazing conversation with Phil, and that makes
Mm.
me feel okay. You know what, this was great. So even though I'm not seeing results from one area, I can lean into the others, and at least instead of that affecting me 100% of me, it might affect me only 20-25% of me. So I love that advice, how we can just break it down and we are not one thing, we're several things, and using those as a kind of a support to some extent, which is unbelievably good advice. Phil, where can people find you, work with you? uh, I don't know, just I know that you coach a lot of people, anything.
So I don't really aim to coach.
Okay.
We have two one-on-one programs. We have a clarity sprint where we start with we give you the emergenetics, and we have trained people that can do it in my team. Then we go into a leadership session to help you uncover some of your biases. Then we go into a strategic session with me, which is my strength, and then I have my integrator, who's a former officer in the army, that is going to put that into an actionable plan with the support of my team. So that's a clarity sprint. I have the intuition mastery program that is one on one, which is very high end. But what I'm actually working on is more, I want to make it accessible because I want to change the culture of entrepreneurship. So I'm building workshops. I have the entrepreneur readiness score that is going to be free, at least in the beginning. So if people want to learn more about where they are right now, where they might have a gap, where they might benefit from, if they want to grow as a person and transform, that's the first step. So they can go on my website, philneal.com. Everything's going to be updated over there. And then they can also follow me on LinkedIn for now. That's where I'm mostly active.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. And Phil, I'll probably have to bring you back at some point because once again, I had a lot of other questions. I would love to next time dive more into your entrepreneurship journey itself. It just how you were able to navigate those, because by looking how other people were able to make it or to build something is a wonderful blueprint, because we can see ourselves, oh, that's the stage I'm on it right now. I'm in the low stage, I'm struggling, but then I can see that based on what Phil did, I might be able to get over that hump and keep going on my journey. So it's like it was like an amazing and insightful conversation, and thank you for coming on the podcast.
I thank you so much, Danielle. I appreciate it. And I had a lot of fun with you. I think you're very good, interesting, and you're doing the right thing. So I can't wait to see how you grow and how you transform.
Thank you, appreciate it, man.